Hi, welcome. I'm Roxanne Glauser, a hand lettering artist and a certified yoga instructor, and I specialize in helping people get unstuck using simple creative tools. You can find me online as Super Doodle Girl, superdoodlegirl.com, or on Instagram, Facebook, or Pinterest. My class is called Drawn to Gratitude, where we'll explore the intersection of art and mindfulness using a gratitude quote that we're going to transform. We're going to draw it with drawn letters. We're going to have some connective marks, and then we're going to have a mindfulness watercolor practice. And all the while, just responding to what shows up on our page. So this class is for you if you have one of those minds that tends to overthink a little bit, or if you're kind of in an artistic rut. So I invite you to join me, and perhaps we can find a little bit of joy through some creative gratitude. Hi, welcome. This is an overview of the supplies that I will be using today in my Drawn to Gratitude project. So you may use any type of markers or watercolors that you prefer, but this is what I'll be using, and so I want to walk you through that so you will know. Those of you who want to follow exactly what I'm using, you'll be able to do that. So I'll be using a pencil for my sketch, and then I'll ink it using the glaze pen and adding some details with the Identa pen. It's a dual tip. I have a micron 5, a micron 01 here. And then I also have this dual tip Tombow that I'll be using the gray end for some shadowing. As far as my coloring, for the watercolor technique, I'm going to be using my 3 favorite Tombow markers, the 755, it's this bright red, the 055 yellow, the 493 blue, and I'll be mixing those together to get my greens, orange, and my purples in the watercolor. And then for my embellishment, you know, I love to go back at the end of a piece and add in a little bit of bling to it. So for those, I have my 3 favorite of the Sparkle Pop pens. I've got the purple, the green, and the orange. And for the white little pop at the end, I'm using the Uniball UM153. So that's an overview of the tools that I'll be using. Now let's get into the project. So the first step is going to be to kind of sketch out some ideas for the layout of your quote. And we're going to, for class today, we're going to use a very simple 3-word quote. I recommend starting out with either one word, well, actually more than 1 word. So like 3 to 5 words works really well. And for our first one, because we're really focused on gratitude, so we're going to do gratitude creates abundance. So jot that down on a sheet of paper, and then what I like to do is grab my pencil and then just kind of think through a couple sketches of what I want my letters to look like. So just a couple of ideas. What I do in this process is I really don't come back and edit or kind of give it another sketch. This is literally just to kind of give me a little bit of a warm up. And so what I'll do then is I'm going to set this over to the side and grab my, I'm going to use the Canson Mixed Media. The 7x10 is my favorite size for activities like this. I'm going to turn it in the landscape manner, and then just I'm going to kind of play with it. So I am going to come out. I want it to kind of fill the page, so I'm going to just kind of sketch just for a little kind of spacing. Gratitude. Okay, I had too much space on the eye, so it's kind of spaced out. I'm going to go with kind of a script, and then I'm just going to add abundance. Abundance. Did you see me like practice like to spell it? All right, so that is truly in no way completed. So then I'm going to use this Identa pen. I love it. It works on all kinds of surfaces. I love that it has the 1 millimeter on one end. It's a bullet tip. I'll be using that one. And then if you need a smaller line, this is one of my favorite travel pens. It has the 0.4 millimeter on the other end. So we'll use that toward the end. So as we begin inking, this is where the mindfulness sets in. And so once I'm inking, kind of the way I'll approach it is each letter is going to be in response to the letter that came before. So I'll write a letter and then just let the next one kind of play with that letter. All right, so that's our first layout of the letters. So what I'll do next is I'm going to grab this glaze pen, and the next step is going to be to outline the letters, and we're going to extend them so they start to connect to each other. And one of the things we'll do, you'll notice we can add serifs to it. We can start to play with them. So we're looking at ways to connect these letters. So one thing, I'll start working on this G. If I bring it down a bit, then I could connect it to the R. Don't be fussy about this. You're looking for ways to connect them. So literally, that's all you were thinking about. Don't think about legibility. Don't think about what should that letter look like. We're doodling. We're going to see what shows up here because we're starting to settle into just letting these lines flow. One thing to be aware of as you start to connect them, that you have some variation of lines so that it doesn't become just a horizontal line connecting the tops of your letters. So what's kind of evolved in this one, I have this kind of, almost looks like a little serif. I teach this process to students of all ages and all like lettering abilities, and it really is fun. So I encourage you to let your mind start to wander and just let the lines start to connect. And what you noticed, what started happening down here, I started playing with a little more of the lines. So we had some basic connectors up here. And then you'll notice, like, as we started connecting, the letters started to morph. So they're starting to get a little less readable in some areas, and that is perfectly fine, because what we're doing is some of the words might be recognizable when you finish, some might not. This is a mindfulness kind of meditative style. So I use this when I just want to settle in, and I just kind of start getting lost in the lines and really truly focused on just things I'm grateful for. I had one lady who told me she would do this with, she had several grandchildren, and so she would do this kind of and write the grandchildren's names and just think about things that she enjoyed about them. Okay, so we have all of our letters are connected. And then what you can do is we're going to start filling in wherever we have an angled line. We want that to be smoothed out. So we've got some that actually cross. So we're going to be filling in those little corners so that they're not sharp. And as I'm doing that, I'll be making some other lines. So if I find things that, if my pen it's going to keep going, and I'm not going to stop to edit or figure out if that's like a great element of design or anything. This is to just keep your pen moving and let it figure it out as you go. So things will happen on this page and you're going to be responding to it. Sometimes I like to work upside down. That helps me quiet that overthinking part of my brain. And when I say the overthinking part, that can be the part that's like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? And it can paralyze you. So this is a style of drawing that I use to calm and then to focus on kind of getting those creativity flowing. You can use it with different types of quotes. Today it's focused on gratitude, because you can do all kinds of things. Noticing up here, because what we're focused on now is to smooth out any sharp edges. And that's why I love this glaze pen. I know some of you lefties are going to be like, I'm just dragging my hand through it. So scooch back, slow down. You can move that page around. So that's one of the things I do love using this pen with this style, because we're not attached to having the paper oriented a certain way. Okay, so we're back real time, and a little chat about what I'm doing here and kind of what your process might be. So those of you that are using the handout as your starting point, notice that as I'm rounding off these edges, there's some interesting things that are showing up. I'm literally, the more I get focused on the rounding, the less I'm noticing what the words say. And so then I'm just letting my pen, as I said, move across the paper. And so whatever shows up in lines is what I go with. And so I've also been playing the little game as I'm doing this. You'll see me add these little dots. And so sometimes I'll be thinking about something that I'm grateful for. And I'll just let the lines continue to move. Sometimes, I'm thinking the names. Maybe it's someone. And when I do that, I like to think about something they might have done for me, or just kind of how they are. Maybe an interaction we had. Just to kind of bring a little more softening into my thoughts. I'm relaxing. I love to do this kind of as a warm-up. My hand is moving very fluidly, kind of very gently around the page. One of the things that I did want to draw your attention to is that I'm going over the lines, so I don't leave anything like a single line. And these glaze pens already, they're I think it's like a 1 millimeter. They kind of have a thick, as the ink comes out, it can be very thick. And then it gets that little buildup on the tip of it. And that bothers some people. And so some people will say you need to clean off the tip as you're using it. I find it rather interesting, and I get a much thicker line, and so I kind of leave it. I actually not kind of leave it. I never clean it off and just let it flow. Okay. Really is interesting to work on it upside down because it does free your mind from overthinking the design of it. Like I said, this one is, we're focused on relaxing that mind and letting the pen and when we move into the watercolor, letting it just play on the page. So now we have they're all connected, and we've smoothed out the edges. And so notice it's very fluid. It's very rounded now. And now play with your pen. If you find areas, like I started adding in some small detail here, just kind of look over your page, and one of the ways you can adjust that, so see we've got kind of a little triangle of them here. So then if we look here, maybe we bring some little dots up here for balance. We've got these little kind of like leaves popping out over here. So if you want to add some on the other side for balance, or maybe some down here. So just look for some areas that might be interesting. Okay, and when you feel complete in that part of it, whoops, I don't know why I feel like I just need one more little thing here. I have a maximalist style, so always like, oh, you know what would help? One more thing. So let's get that one more little thing. Oh, now those are kind of an interesting one. So let's see, let's get a few of those popped in. Oh, that's kind of fun. And here we go. All right, now the last thing that I like to do before I bring in the paint, I like to hold my pen at the end, and I'm going to use the glaze pen for this, And I like to create a little frame. And this is definitely not precious, so it's not measured. This is, I like to think of it, while I'm doing this, I think of it as the abundance that comes from the gratitude. So we have this little abundance of lines and doodles on the page. Ah, that looks nice. And so then you have, this is one of my favorite frames. So that now you have choice. If you, and I would do this at the end, but we've got some choice to embellish this frame as well. So let's dive into adding color. Okay, so as we get ready to add color, I wanted to show you the watercolor technique that I'll be using with the Tombow markers. So I have 2 cups of water, one for my warm colors, one for my cool colors. So that's going to be my red, yellow, orange over here, my blues, greens over there. And then I have a tin. So this is a little marker tin. And I love these little metal tins because I travel a lot with my creative tools. And so that's why I'm going to show you with only 3 colors how you can get a really satisfying color palette here. So we'll be using these 3 Tombow markers. And I don't travel with a water brush. I have a little Nalgene container that I have for my water, but these are the 2 that I take with me. They're not super precious. It's a Simply Simmons 6 and a Princeton Velvet Touch 1. So I'll be using a size 6 and a 1. So let me demonstrate some techniques and then we'll get back to our artwork. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is to just kind of play with your Tombows. So this one is the 755. So if I just draw a little square with it, let me make a note over here. 755. This is the Tombow. And you'll want to move quickly. I think it'll move. Yeah, this is going to move really well. That's why you'll want to test this out. This technique, it depends on your papers of if it will move or not. I teach a lot of classes for people who are new into lettering and creativity, so we use I try to use kind of inexpensive tools to get them in so they can kind of learn. So that's what we can do. I just drew the square and you can see there's a little bit of the square underneath it. But if I then just add a little water to my brush, you can get that. You can get a softer value, a lighter value, and you can move that pigment kind of far. And so I really like that. So that's just the 755 by itself. Let's see, let me put a little mark over here so we see what it looks like without anything. So then our next one, we're going to do red, we're going to do the yellow next. It's the 055. Again, this is our Tombow. And this is the 055. So let's see what it looks like. So here it is, just plain straight out of the marker. And I'm going to leave this one open-ended a bit. So I've cleaned out my brush really well. I'm going to add. And so it's quite satisfying to be able to just have, you could simplify this and have just a water brush. And so then you wouldn't need the little container with you. So I really love, this is a style. I do a lot of journaling when I travel and kind of playing, being creative. So yeah, kind of fun to do this. So let's see what we can get. This is the 493. These specific 3 work really well. They also are part of the Tombow Bright set. So I love to work with bright colors. So if that's kind of your you're interested, you can grab a full set. You can also just get the 3 and be quite satisfied. This blue moves just beautifully. All right. I didn't get the lighter value because I just scooted it down, but you could definitely spread that out. I'm going to come down because I'm going to do a color wheel over there so you can see what it looks like. You can also get those cool little blooms. I really like those in my doodles. Look, too much water. But it looks really interesting. I like lots of textures there. All right, so here you can see, just adding water, we can go from a darker value to a lighter value. But here's where the magic comes in with these particular markers. So let's see what we can get when we mix them together. So I'm going to do a color wheel. I'm going to color this in because we want a lot of marker there. Kind of come over to the edges. And then we're going to do a little bit of yellow. We're going to do about 1/3 and 1/3. So here. And so I would color it in just so we'll have enough to spread it around and let it mix on the paper. Okay, so the same colors we had there. Now let's mix it up and you'll see. And then coming in, getting that nice puddle of blue. And then taking it right to the edges. And so this one, we're gonna let that blue come over here. And there we go, nice. And then we're gonna come up here in the top and we'll let these two. Now you have to work kind of quickly here. You can see I've got a little, kind of dried a little bit here, but you can see kind of what the colors that we'll get. So there is a full range of our colors that came from using, let's see, this one is the 755 is here. This is the 055 is here. And over here we have the 493. All right, so this is the Tombow, and these are the dual brush pens. You can also do this with Crayola, just Crayola markers, because they are water-based. They do tend to fade kind of quickly, but for what we're doing, this is very satisfying. So let's get color into our artwork. All right, so you've seen how we can take our 3 markers, add water to them, and we can get a wide variety of colors here. So I'm just gonna play and do this very quickly, not be very precious at all, and then I'll show you how another technique we can use with the markers to come back in. So I'm gonna start, and let's get some yellow on here. And what we'll do is I'm gonna just take the edges here, just gonna put some yellow in. Gonna bring in a little bit here, a little bit here. So just put a bit on there. I'm gonna work pretty quickly. I think I'm gonna bring in some blue up here. I'm gonna play with that. And then down here, I'm just gonna play with bringing in some pink. So let's see how far that gets us. So again, just as I did in our sample, I'm going to start with clean brush. I'm going to get it on this yellow that's not near anything first, so that we'll keep it a little pure. I'm working real time so you can see how quickly I am working on this. And so you can see real time what happens when as soon as that water hits the marker. This pink is a very, it seems to have like a lot of pigment in it. It's very loud, very happy. And so yeah, let's just give it some water, let it play around. Let's come up here into the blues. We're gonna tap this. Oh, nice. Uh-oh, we had some orange that was happening there. Yeah, so these three really is just fun. This is part of the mindfulness part of it. And also the kind of release control. So this is even less control than if you were actually, taking the watercolors and placing them on here. All right, so we're getting lots of little water puddles on. I think what I'm going to do is I'm drying off my brush. I'm going to come here and pick up. There's a big puddle here. And so I'm just going to take a puddle, bring it over there. And then I want to bring in like some yellow into it, but I don't, because I've got so much water going on here, I'm going to take my marker and I'll use the tin, the lid here, and I'll just do the little puddle effect. And let's go ahead and I'm going to put these, let's see, yellow, then let's put some blue. You know what? I'll probably want to have some green over here, so I'll put more yellow on this end. All right, so now I've got a little palette, so I can, if I want to, I can create my little puddle. And now I can bring in more color and kind of play with it, let it mix around there. Let's see, so over here, what do I want? Let's just bring a little more of that yellow in. And now I want to make a little bit more. Ooh, oh, look at that. When you mix it over here, we can get a little more of the green. Okay, so this one is turning out really, really bright. So let's take, I've got this little bit of a sponge. So I'm going to take up some of the extra water. And I like using this in this technique. It's going to have these little black, it'll have little specks on it, but then you'll also, as you start to lift it, you're going to get this cool, a little bit of a texture kind of thing. So I like that. If you don't, or use a clean sponge, that would work too. It's like, don't use a sponge, use a clean sponge. That would work. This is what I have on my desk here. All right, so that's looking kind of interesting. All right, so now let's see, what do we want to do? Okay, so I'm going to switch to the smaller brush and I'm going to come over here, create out of my little puddle. Let's see what happened. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's kind of interesting. So you can now take your brush and if you want to, you can add little bits in. So you can do wet on wet. So right now it's still pretty wet. So if you like that kind of wet on wet technique, you can do that, or you can dry it off and go on top of so it won't spread so much. So I'm going to dry mine off. I'll be right back. And so once it is dried off, then you can create your puddles. And now you've got a nice little, almost your liquid watercolors over there. And so now what you'll be looking for is just kind of interesting places to add that color. And so with this, I really like this purple that we've got, that red and the blue. And so that's gonna bring, we can do you can play with what it looks like in different parts. Again, not too precious about what's going on. And at this point, when I find something that's interesting like that, I like the pink up there, I don't like it as much down there. What I'll do is I will do more of something that catches my eye. And the beauty of a process like this, if you're working on something that's very detail oriented and your focus is really, really intense, it can be fatiguing to the brain. And so to switch and do something that's different, or creativity in a different way than you normally would, can be very relaxing when you go back to your preferred modality. Okay, so it's like you do something that's hard and different. So if this comes very easy to me and it's very relaxing. If you were to do this and it feels kind of hard to you, try it for a bit. And if you're one that prefers no color or black and white, so give this a whirl, a little bit of a whirl. If it feels awkward, kind of stay with it for a wee bit. And then notice what happens when you go back to, you're like, oh, it feels so much more relaxing to go back to just the black and white. So it's all noticing, it's experimenting with what calms you. Like I said, I just play with this style and can just sit here. I mean, it's harder when I'm talking to you guys. But if I were just working on this by myself, I'd probably be thinking about my grandkids, thinking about friends I visited recently, thinking about, even something as simple as I'd be thinking about just being grateful to have a place where I can create. Yeah, so just kind of whatever pops up. Oh, and this is kind of interesting because I noticed that that purple has gotten really prominent. And I am very curious. I'm about to grab some blue because I'm feeling like this purple is starting to be kind of bossy on the place. Yeah. And since this one is that, I don't even know if there's this. Yeah, I think I can squeeze in a little bit. I was going to switch, but the magic comes when you've got like everything and you're working and you have your palette there. So I'm going to just put 3 little parts of blue. And oh, look at that one. It's it's a darker blue. Yeah, so you can play with it and see what shows up. And now we will come into it with our Sparkle Pop pens to just add a little bit more. Okay, so now what we are going to use, let's come in with our microns and our little 0.4 end of our Identipens. Let's grab so now this part can be interesting. You can, if you like the black, the dark contrast, you can take your micron and start to add little parts around. So what you see here is I'm taking some of the almost like a Zentangle-ishness to it without much structure. Again, letting that pen move. So we're doodling, so that means you are you are making marks that are interesting to you, so you'll let those show up. So this is what we could do with the 5. That's what I have here. All right. And now the last part is to add the white gel pen. So this one you can see it still has elements of being legible. This on top of, I really like it on top of the glaze. I think it gives us the highest contrast. So if you were to use this on top of your yellow, you're just not going to get the pop you get from on top of that glaze. So we'll add a few little extras over here. All right, so there we have it. We are balanced out, and we have had, so the first time you do it, you know, you're like thinking through all the stuff, so your brain's in learning mode. So once you've done it a couple times, like this is a very very natural, very mindful process for me. And like I said, I really settle my mind and just let it relax into what I'm focusing on. So I taught you guys with a gratitude quote. Like I said, you can use this technique with scripture, with poetry, with people's names. But one of the things that I do love is that at the end of it, you have a pretty cool looking kind of abstract artwork. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and I look forward to seeing you in class again soon. Thank you.